All right, next up, we got the Trembolone sandwich. Trembolone, the king of steroids, the steroid of steroids, nectar of the gods. Hey guys, I've got a fun video today. It's gonna be an anabolic tier list. I'm gonna go over the anabolics, injectables and orals and sort them into tiers. Some of these on the list I haven't used, so I'm gonna give you my perspective as to where they go based on what I've read and the research I've done, as well as the guys' results and experiences on the compound. So we'll see how far we get. I've got the sun coming in blinding me through that window, so don't mind the Andrew Tate look today. But anyway, okay, here we go. All right, starting with Anadrol. Now, I used Anadrol. Before we get into this, I should probably go over what makes a compound good and what makes a compound bad. So obviously good is the effects it produces, the strength, the size. The bad would be how sustainable they are. So for example, something like halo testing, right? It's great if you're like a powerlifter, it's probably an S tier. You know, you use that the last 2 weeks, 10 milligrams a day going into a meet. Your strength is gonna be out of this world, but for me, I'm not a powerlifter, I've got no use for halo testing. So for me, that's gonna be a D tier. Like, what am I gonna do on halo testing for 2 weeks? Nothing, absolutely nothing. I could see it being used to like push past the strength plateau, but other than that, there's probably better compounds. Yeah, so I'm gonna rate them based on their effects, the side effects, how sustainable they are. So let's get going. All right, number one, Anadrol. I'm gonna put Anadrol in C tier. And the reason I'm putting it in C tier, and I understand that's a bit of a hot take because a lot of guys, they really like Anadrol. But I used this at the end of a bulk earlier this year, and within 2 weeks, it completely crushed my appetite to the point where I couldn't eat anything. Whenever I ate, I just felt kind of nauseous. But a lot of guys, you know, they'd probably put Anadrol in A tier because of the strength it gives them. But for me, you know, I probably got equal strength from Anavar without the appetite suppression, without the potential gyno, without the liver stress. So for me, Anadrol, I'm sorry, buddy, but you're going in C tier. Halo testing. I've never used this one. And for me, you know, it's going in D. I've got no use for halo testing. I'm not a powerlifter. I'm not a professional bodybuilder. Some professionals will use it the last like 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks of a competition to like really bring the hardness in the physique. Like I said earlier, powerlifters will use it before meets. But for me, it's a D tier. It's very harsh. I've got no need for halo testing. Never used it, not interested in it. All right, next. Anavar. Anavar's gonna go in A. I've used Anavar a bunch of times. It's very mild as long as you keep the dose relatively conservative. And when I talk about conservative, I don't mean 50, 70 milligrams. I mean 25 milligrams a day for 8 weeks. I did do 50 milligrams, but that gave me a bit of acne on my shoulders. So 25 didn't give me those effects, those side effects. But it also gives me great strength gains, comparable to Anadrol. I felt just as strong on 25 milligrams of Anavar as I did on 50 milligrams of Anadrol, without the appetite loss and without the gyno. Very mild oral. I would say 25 milligrams is probably going to give you 80% of the results that 50 milligrams will. So no acid reflux, no random ass cramps. I remember when I was taking 50 milligrams for a while, I would wake up in the middle of the night and in the morning, I'd actually get woken up in the morning by like a really intense like foot cramp. Yeah, I didn't enjoy that. So yeah, dropped the dose back to 25 and then it was great. So Anavar, it's going in A. All right, D-ball, Arnold's favorite gym candy, D-ball. I'm gonna put this in C tier, in my opinion. D-ball is almost an outdated steroid. There's other things that do the same thing D-ball does, but do it a little bit better. For example, you could argue Anadrol's just a better version of D-ball. So for that reason, it's going in C. You also got to consider that it's quite hard to manage estrogen on D-ball. It converts to methyl estradiol, which is a synthetic version of estrogen, which is harder to manage than regular estrogen. So a lot of guys are going to give them gyno problems. It's going to give them things like acne, excessive water retention, due to the aggressive form of estrogen that it produces. So yeah, for that reason, it's going into C. Okay, Boldenone. Boldenone then, the horse steroid. I'm going to put that in B. I always think of Boldenone as like a poor man's Primo. I guess it has some other advantages that Primo doesn't have, namely, it's known to boost appetite for some guys. It also manages estrogen like Primo does, and it also increases hematocrit generally more than other injectables, which it makes it good for things like endurance. For me, it's B tier. I can see it being useful in like a bulk, but yeah, never used it, don't really intend to use it. I would say high C, low B tier for Boldenone. All right, next up then, Primo. I'm gonna put Primo at the high end of B tier. Now, a lot of guys like Primo, but personally I think it's a bit overrated. If you're not careful, it can crash your estrogen, and for that reason you can't really use too much of it. It's also very expensive. It's also low milligram per milliliter. Yeah, I'm gonna stick that in the high end of B. But I guess from like a health standpoint, it's the most refined anabolic there is. So I can see it being maybe low A, high B. I'll stick it in high B for now. Okay, Superdrol. This is a tough one. I think Superdrol suffers from a lot of the same things that Halo does. Namely being that you can't run it for very long because it's just so toxic. Maybe this is just a stereotype, but I feel like Halo is the powerlifter's drug of choice before going into a competition, and Superdrol is the bodybuilder's drug of choice before going into a competition. Those last few weeks, I never used Superdrol, but from the accounts of guys I've read, it blows them up with glycogen, fills the muscles out. It gives them almost like a 3D kind of comic book type appearance. So I guess if this tier list was like what's the best for like the last week of a contest, you could do something like that, right? But it's not. So for me, I've got no use for either Halo or Superdrol, so they're going to be down in D. All right, next up we have oral turinabol. I don't know whether this is just me or whether this is just the impression that I have, because I've never used T-ball. I always imagine that it's like a cleaner version of D-ball. Now, if you've used T-ball, drop me a comment and let me know what it was like, because I'm curious. But I've heard it tends to be quite mild. It can boost endurance. A lot of fighters use it. I think John Jones got popped for T-ball, didn't he? Johnny T-ball Jones. But yeah, I don't think it's as good as Anavar for the purposes that I would be using it for. So I'm going to put it in B tier for now. Yeah, I'm happy with B tier for T-ball. All right, next up, we got the Trembolone sandwich. Trembolone, the king of steroids. The steroid of steroids, nectar of the gods. Where's Tren gonna go? First of all, before I put it anywhere, I'll tell you my experience with Tren. I've used it once at a very low dose. I use 70 milligrams a week. And I'll tell you, 70 milligrams of Tren Ace a week. I did 10 milligrams a day. And within a week, everything blew up. My shoulders rounded out and capped. My traps started popping. I had vascularity in my shoulders, vascularity in my forearms. Strength was up in the gym, felt great. But come week like 2 or 3, I noticed I would wake up randomly in the middle of the night with like racing thoughts. It wasn't so bad that I couldn't sleep at all. I was able to get back to sleep. But I can see higher doses definitely causing a problem. In terms of results though, oh man, I don't think anything on here is gonna rival Tren. I'm gonna put it in S tier, but that's my limited experience with it, and that's a low dose. That's 10 milligrams a day of Tren Ace. I know some guys that take 50 milligrams a week and they can't sleep for shit. You know, they get a terrible mood, it ruins their appetite. So for those guys, it could be down in D. So it's very dependent upon how you react to it, I guess. Again, this tier list is for me. I'm gonna put it in S tier. But yeah, if you've got experience on Tren, let me know. All right, next up, Ben Johnson's favorite steroid. A lot of fighters use this one, Winstrol. It produces very lean gains without adding too much weight. It's a very dry steroid, but for that reason, it can give some guys joint issues. I used Winstrol for a couple of weeks just to test it because I wanted to see how it compared to Anavar. And I was using it sublingually, 25 milligrams. And the amount of mind-muscle connection in the gym was absolutely insane. Like I was doing incline dumbbell press. I was using like 38 kilograms a side incline dumbbell press. I normally get about 6 to 8 reps and I got 10 reps, but it felt so dodgy. It gave me like this weird kind of strength. I can easily see why muscle tears and tendon tears happen on Winstrol, and it tends to be harsh on the liver. So for that reason, you can't run it for very long, and it's not as good as Anavar, so I can't put it in A tier. It didn't give me the nausea or lack of appetite that Anadrol did, so I can't put it in C tier. I'm going to put it at the top of B tier. All right, next up, Nandrolone. I have limited experience with the short ester MPP. And for me, like in terms of results in the gym, it was great. You know, it blew my strength up, it filled me up with glycogen. My joints felt fantastic, but it killed my mood. I don't know what it was. I was talking to my friend about it and he was saying it could be a prolactin issue. But I was taking P5P, 100 milligrams a day, and that didn't affect it. So, I don't know, it's a weird one. It just gave me this sort of like apathy. Like my mood wasn't super high, it wasn't super low, it was just meh. It was like flat, just this flat mood. I didn't enjoy it. It took a good couple of weeks for it to come back to normal as well when I took it out. So yeah, in terms of strength and size, it could almost go in A. But because it affected my mood so much, I've got to put it in B. All right, Proviron then. This is a weird one because it's not really like any of these other anabolics. It's not like any of the orals in that it's purely androgen. It's basically oral DHT. You know, it's got no anabolic properties. It's purely androgenic. And for a lot of guys, they'll use it to cure things like post-finasteride syndrome, where they've crushed the DHT for so long, they've lost like sex drive and libido and penile sensitivity. It's very good for restoring that stuff. But in terms of what I would use it for, I don't see it having any application. If I want like a pure cosmetic look, I'm going to go for something like Anavar. That's going to give me strength and cosmetics. A lot of guys will use it the last few weeks of a show, like these two, for just pure cosmetic purposes. Personally, I don't see any point. Like I don't see anything that you could get out of Proviron that's something like something like Winstrol wouldn't, you know. For that reason, it's going in C tier. As far as side effects go, very mild. It does tend to crush your SHBG, so you're going to get a lot of free testosterone floating around, which could cause issues like acne and androgen related issues like that. So that's something to be careful with. But as far as like just side effects go, quite mild. I'll do that. I'll do that. All right, test is best, the king. I'm going to put that in A tier. I'll do this. I'll put it above Anavar because it's the foundation, right? You need to have testosterone. As far as managing side effects, I think for testosterone, it largely depends on your own genetics, how much estrogen conversion you get. Like for me, I would say I'm a moderate aromatizer. On 300 milligrams of test a week, I need about 0.5 Arimidex a week to keep my estrogen in line. And for example, I can get better results from 70 milligrams of Tren than I can with 300 milligrams of test without the need for an AI. So for that reason, it's staying in A. Yeah, I'm happy with that. All right, next up, Masteron is going in S. For me, I love Masteron. It makes me feel great in terms of drive, libido, mind-muscle connection in the gym, aggression in the gym, confidence outside the gym. It doesn't affect my estrogen levels. It doesn't make me hold water. I get very, very few side effects from it. It's just a pure, clean anabolic. I'm going to do that, actually. I'm going to put Masteron as the king. Sorry, Trembolone, you've been dethroned by Master Ronald versus Trent Balone. Yeah, I'm going to put Masteron in S tier. It's that good. It's that good. There's one thing, though, about Masteron. If you're prone to hair loss, avoid it because it's going to shed your hair. But if you don't care or you're bald anyway, use Masteron. It's great. Absolutely great. Okay, finally, we have Ment Trestolone Acetate. I've never used this one, but my brother has, and he said it was the only thing that gave him gyno, and he's very, very resistant to gyno. And that's in line with what I've read online. It's very hard to manage the estrogen on it. It's super wet, but it can produce great strength gains, similar to Trent. But because I've never used it, I can't give you a personal account, unfortunately. I'm going to put it in the top of C tier. You know, I may use it in future. I may think it's really good, but for now, I've got no experience with it other than knowing that it gave my little brother some gyno issues. So yeah, it's staying in C for now. All right, that just about wraps it up, guys. This has been a fun one. I would like to know what you guys think about Anadrol being in C tier and how you respond to it. I can't tolerate Anadrol for shit, apparently. And Tren. I want to know your experiences with Tren and with Anadrol. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Check out my blog, enhanceplayer.com, and I'll see you next time.